In the latest episode of Jobless Reincarnation, we don't continue with Sophie's story, but instead shift over to Rudy's, and it picks us up maybe not too long after where the first season ended, with him going toward the north in hopes of finding his mother Zenith. So to begin, when Rudy's on this adventure, he's still very much mourning the loss of Eris, especially after they spent that special night together. And this makes him a bit grumpy, some would even say rude, but pretty much you can see there's a desire for him to stay to himself, not really connect with anybody, and you could even say maybe he's not as depressed as he was in his first life, but he's definitely in that realm of not enjoying living. With him being so young, a woman named Suzanne, who's traveling with another young lady named Sarah, they notice him, and Suzanne tries to talk to him a little bit, maybe try to cheer him up, but Rudy's giving very curt answers and even questioning why is she talking to him, which Sarah does not like because Sarah idolizes Suzanne, and as Rudy watches their interaction, he kind of sees a little bit of Eris in Sarah, and Suzanne kind of reminds him of Ghislaine, I think is how you pronounce her name, and with that, he doesn't find any peace. He doesn't even really chuckle about it, but the interaction maybe provides some alleviation, though all things considered, it might have also kind of kept him in a sour mood. It's a little bit hard to tell when it comes to the beginning. But once they arrive, originally Rudy thought he was just going to split off and go about his day, disband his group, and start becoming an adventurer that goes out solo. Suzanne sees that he's pretty much on a death wish type of road, so she decides to have him temporarily join her group Counter Arrow, which Sarah protests against because she really can't stand Rudy worth a damn. But as for the other ones like Timothy, Mimir, Patrice, they get along with Rudy. Granted, they don't know what he can really offer. They know he's a mage who can apparently do spells without incantations, but they're pretty much reliant on Suzanne vouching for him because he doesn't audition, he doesn't show he can really do anything. All they see is this kid, maybe not that much older than Sarah, who has this giant staff that's wrapped up. But luckily for them, even though Rudy's kind of standoffish, he does seem like he has some idea of what he's doing. He wants to contribute, and yes, Sarah cuts him down whenever he tries to, but for Suzanne, she appreciates the desire for effort. There's a hierarchy, there's a bureaucracy involved, which doesn't really allow for changes in the plan, but effort is always valued. And Suzanne even tries to make the effort so that when it comes to Sarah, she understands, yes, right now you're part of this group, but as you see, the group can disband. You may need to find new members, create a new group on your own, so maybe tone it down a bit. Be cordial. Yes, he's not the friendliest person out here, but sometimes people who may not be the friendliest can be the most powerful, the most helpful, or, as shown later on, can even save your life. Because originally it seems like they were just hunting some type of grizzly bears, white ones, which was simple, but then these black ones come out that are covered in mud, then these other white ones, and while it seemed that Suzanne's group at first is able to take them on, eventually they get overwhelmed, and if it wasn't for the level of power that Rudy has, they would have all been massacred. And it seems what helped Rudy get to this point of being able to save everybody was he was finally able to break away from the idea that he's worthless because he got abandoned by Eris, and I want to say Rugerd is the way you say his name. It's been a long time. Either way, he realizes that he has a place, he has value, he has purpose, and with that, he's able to summon a spell that wipes out all the grizzly bears that were coming after them. And yes, he burns his hand in the process, but in him showing his power, him protecting everyone and saving everyone, he makes a friend out of Suzanne who shakes his hand, even though it's a bit burnt. And when they get back to the Adventurers Guild, she makes it very clear that it wasn't just her group, but it was also especially Rudy that allowed them to survive and even thrive, since now they have all these bear coats that they can sell. So, after the celebration of coming back alive and probably making a good amount of money, Suzanne doesn't officially make Rudy a part of the group since he's still separate, but a welcome guest. But it does seem that with Rudy saving people's lives and, his confidence being rebuilt a bit, he's willing to start letting things go. He's willing to start let go of some of his negative feelings and memories, which leads to him burning Eris's hair that he's been keeping on hand. But what he does not do, because yes, we might have seen him very depressed and even heroic in a sense, but this episode ends with a reminder that Rudy is still a bit of a pervert, and he cherishes these pair of panties that he carries around, seemingly as a means of comfort. Now, I'm going to assume those are Eris's panties. I cannot remember. Maybe it might be someone else's that he's met before, but either way, it seems that Rudy is now venturing back to who he usually is when he's in high spirits. So whether or not we go back to seeing Sophie and then Rudy and it's a back and forth thing, or else we're going to be with Rudy for a while until eventually it's time to meet up with Sophie, who knows. All that matters is that Rudy is starting to get on the mend, and he should be back to his usual powerful, perverted, but cool self within maybe an episode or two. So, top level highlight is just how it handles Rudy's emotions. For a lot of shows, and I'll admit this show kind of did it in this first season every now and then, I feel like a lot of shows, they have it where they either focus on trauma dumping on the lead, and then they introduce some type of love interest, or it's a comedic relief in order to kind of send them back on a good path, but it's a little bit different with Rudy. They allow him to really sit in his emotions for multiple episodes, and it's something that doesn't feel overdrawn, it doesn't feel overdramatic, it feels right. You're talking about a guy who in his first life had very little close contact with anybody. His family didn't want anything to do with him. No real friends, close relations. Probably didn't have any sexual interactions either. And now, as this new person, he had all that. Yet, even though he was such a good friend, a good family member, all the things that, he wasn't in his past life, and now he's been rewarded with having the experiences that he didn't get before, everything was still taken away from him in a moment. Even with him trying to be the best he could be. And that messes with a person. Never mind, it messes with a person who's on their second life and is really trying to figure out a way to do things right. Never mind, add in the fact that he got dumped after his first time. And say what you will about really being perverted, but he still has a heart. He still has emotions. And I can't imagine anybody, after you giving yourself to someone you've built such a relationship with, including being in life and death situations, them leaving you the morning after you two had sex and you being okay with it. Especially because when Eris did that, that was when the group dismantled and everything. So now all Rudy has is the hope that his mother's alive and to find her, since yes, his dad is alive, and those two, after finally being in the last season, kind of made up, but he knows that his dad cannot really be or do what he needs him to do because his dad is now the head of a new group and needs to protect these other people. So Rudy's on his own again, and I really do think that he still harbors abandonment issues from his last life. So whether or not he gets with Suzanne's group and, kind of heals through that, or else maybe he just becomes more social and helps other groups in order to get bounties and make money. Who knows? But the point of all this is, it's nice to see that this show really takes seriously the mental health of its lead, his emotions, and doesn't make things move like an off and on switch. So the next highlight for us is really thinking that the counter arrow group could possibly die. And the reason I bring that up is, as noted in the notable highlights, a lot of shows and movies, they try to trauma dump on a character, especially when they're down, so they can take them all the way to rock bottom. But I feel like Rudy was already at rock bottom, and just taking him down either further would have been a bit much. Yet, thinking about the first season, nobody that Rudy was close to actually died. They got harmed, definitely put into some dire situations, but nobody died with his involvement. I mean, the reason he even got into this whole new world is because he sacrificed himself for someone else. So with that in mind, as he mentioned that Sarah's like Eris and that Suzanne's like Ghislaine, or however you pronounce the name, it was like, are you setting us up for something? And then when you had all these other people who they only gave us like a name and what they do, it kind of felt like this is going to be something that was made to watch us see everyone get massacred, and then Rudy, either in an act of rage or else, I mean, we haven't seen Man God in a while, so it could be Man God doing something, but either way, it really seemed like it was going to be that type of moment where you can suspend your disbelief and that something bad was actually going to happen. Not to the point of killing Rudy, because that we know wasn't going to happen, but to really put him in a position where his inaction could really get people killed. And I know that did technically happen to some random side characters in season 1, but I feel like this situation would have been much more different because he traveled with these people, he was forming a bond with them, they were becoming someone that was kind of opening him up and getting him out of his shell, so it would have been a bit more emotionally impactful than what we saw in the last season. So, last topic is on the fence topic, and that's just what Sarah's trajectory might be. And I say that because when it comes to Sarah, she is painted to be sort of like the new Eris, I mean. And I'm just hoping that when it comes to how she's developed, they take a different track. Now, to note, Rudy's meeting her at a different time in his life. Sarah seems to be either at the age or older than Eris, so it's not an apples-to-apples comparison at all. However, all I'm hoping for is that, yes, we get consistency in terms of character development, story building, and also world building, but not the kind of consistency where it wants to repeat storylines with characters just because it's easier to do. And right now, it's hard to say if Sarah may take a full 180 turn and now start to like Rudy and maybe even try to understand him and kind of get beyond these walls that he's built up, but I don't know. I recognize that sooner or later, Rudy's going to become that Ichi perverted kid again, or grown man who's... I'm still not really over the fact that it's a grown man who was messing around with someone who's under 18 in last season, but the point of the matter is, Rudy is eventually going to be the same Rudy that we knew in the first season, who liked to peek and take people's underwear. So if Sarah's going to become the new person that he kind of lusts after, I just hope that they figure out a way to make that story something that feels fresh and not a rehash. Overall, from giving us a protagonist who is allowed to be emotional but not over the top, to giving us quality action sequences, and once again building up the type of supporting characters that you can see stand on their own, Jobless Reincarnation remains perhaps one of our favorite anime and even shows in general, just because it knows how to give you everything you need in one package. And I honestly think, even though we're only 2 episodes into like what I think is more than a 20 episode season, I'm not given the same type of feeling I get with a lot of shows where I feel like this is the height and it's all downhill from here. I'm not given the same feeling that this is the highest point and it's going to be all downhill from here.